All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Welcome to the Mark Thompson Show. I am not Mark Thompson. I'm Michael Shure sitting in for Mark today. You're going to have to suffer through Michael and Kim and Tony today, and there will be no Mark, but we will still bring the goods. We will do our very best to. We have Gary Dietrich joining us a little bit later in this hour. In the second hour, we have Patrick McEnroe joining us. Talk a little bit of sports. I know it's not always the easiest, but we'll talk about sports, politics, tennis. Mark loves tennis, so he'll be excited to have Patrick McEnroe on our air, talking about French Open and other things, international sports related. We had a busy weekend. A lot happened, as seems to be the case. We have an official new pope who has his own fisherman's ring. Kim, we had a boat tragically hit the top of the Brooklyn Bridge, or I guess the bottom of the Brooklyn Bridge, killing sailors, Mexican sailors. It was a really sad thing. We have the sad news of the former president's cancer diagnosis, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But we also had a rare Sunday night for a political geek like me. We had a very rare vote in the House of Representatives. In committee, the Budget Committee voted to pass what can only be described, Kim, as a big, beautiful bill.
And they did it. They did it late at night. It's called a rare late night, Sunday night voting. Why did they do that? What was they couldn't get where they wanted to on Friday, and they have the right to keep those members of Congress in session until they reach an agreement. And there were some conservative holdouts on this bill that thought it didn't go far enough. And they were Republicans voting against the bill in committee. They had to do what they could in order to get it out of committee. There were some concessions made, though there were no specifics either from Jody Arrington, the Texas rep who was the chair of that committee, nor from the speaker, nor from anybody else involved as to what exactly those concessions were that brought these Republicans to the table. Now, the Republicans can't afford to lose any votes. Whether or not they'll have all the votes they need is under question. There were 4 members of that committee, Republican members of that committee, who voted against it. All 4 voted for it on a late Sunday night. And we will then see what happens on the floor of Congress. It will then go to the Senate, where it will be marked up, sent back to the House, where it will not be expected to pass because of what happens in the Senate. This is a long road, but it is the most important priority of the president. And so that means that there are some things in there that many Republicans and many Democrats, fewer Republicans, but many Democrats are questioning. It will be most likely a party line vote once it gets out. But let's listen, if we can, to Jody Arrington, who is the aforementioned chairman of the Budget Committee in the House.
Oh, ye of little faith. Look, we took a big step, a critical step tonight in advancing this One Big Beautiful Bill Act, but more importantly, making President Trump's America First agenda a reality in the lives of the American people. That's what this is about. There'll be lots of moving parts, lots of machinations in our deliberative process. There have been for the previous few months. There will be over the next several days. But the important thing is we give the president the resources and the tools that he needs to implement the America First vision, to make America safer and more prosperous again, and give the American people the confidence that their children will have a great quality of life and the blessings of freedom and opportunity, just like every generation to this point. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
How involved was the president in the discussions this weekend?
The president has been very deferential to the House and letting the process play out. And the leadership of the House has been deferential to the members and to the respective committees involved. We've had 11 authorizing committees involved, as you know, and all of that work was rolled up into one reconciliation bill tonight, where we now send it to the Rules Committee. So I would say this is how Congress ought to run. The president's been clear about what he wants and what he needs to implement the America First agenda. There's no ambiguity about that.
Mr. Chairman,
we also know that this is the most consequential piece of legislation in modern history. And whether it's economic policy or security, there is nothing that is more important to put in place than the policies wrapped up in this reconciliation bill.
So, first of all, I love when they talk about their kids. So here's what's going to happen. Your kids are going to have higher student loan bills, and there are going to be fewer student loans issued. As Tammy Stansell said in the chat while I was listening to Jody Arrington, isn't the Senate going to tear this apart? Yes, the Senate will tear this apart. They will reprioritize, and they will likely send a bill back to the House to be voted on that will not pass, is my sort of predictive analysis here. Jody Arrington talking like a budget committee chair should, saying that his bill is the most important bill in the history of Congress and the world. This is monumental. This is everything. That's what they do. He's doing a good job of talking up his committee and the importance that they play on the Hill. That said, this bill will not look like this when it comes back to the House and will not be voted on in the exact same way that it was previously. We should go into, Kim, a couple of things in this bill. I don't know what America First means. America First, isn't every bill that comes out of Congress presumably America First, like to make America better, to help people? Well, this one, you got to look hard to see who it helps. But we know who it's definitely going to help, because it wants to keep all of the tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts that are set to expire, the ones that were, from 2017 set to expire. They want to have this go beyond the end of this year when they were set to expire. Not only that, they want to have new tax cuts in there, which are taxes. He wanted to do some things when he first set out into office, like ending taxes on tips and overtime and Social Security. But this bill, while it does add that here, it does, it promises new tax deductions for tipped income and overtime income and things like that. But they're so expensive, those tax cuts, that they're doing other budget math to make it so that they can pay for those, which means, a huge mess for anyone who is going to have to be president after Donald Trump and run the Congress after Donald Trump. So, he's limiting tax deductions at the state and federal level, and Republicans from New York and California are up in arms over that. So it's going to be paid for. So it sounds good on top, but looks, once you dig in, like so many of these things, it's going to be very, very difficult to see how it's going to please everybody who has to vote on it.
The little hairs on the back of my neck stood up last night when I saw that the bill had gone through this late night vote and cleared a key committee, and they wouldn't say what changed. They would only say, well, there's some changes that were made that allowed these four holdouts that wanted deeper cuts to Medicare or Medicaid rather.
Yeah.
There are four holdouts that there were some changes that allowed them to then support this bill.
Yeah. And one of those holdouts is Andrew Clyde from Georgia, who one of the other reasons he was holding out was because it eliminated, there were huge restrictions on silencers on guns that he wanted lifted. So he didn't want restrictions on silencers, which is why he was one of the holdouts, in addition to he is in part of that very conservative wing of the party. So it was Ralph Norman from so it was Brasheen from Oklahoma, Ralph Norman from South Carolina, and then Clyde from Georgia, as I mentioned, and one more who's escaping me right now. But these, a lot of this, though, Kim, is not written down. A lot of this is the way Congress works. Promises for later bills. Well, we promise if you do this, we will do that. Yeah.
But,
so
Johnson wouldn't say what it was. He said, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it." Well, when they don't tell you what the promise was that got these guys to vote their way,
right?
Should we not be concerned about what that promise was that was made to, in writing in a back room or not in writing in a back room, secrets whispered into ears? what should we just go, oh, okay, now first they hated it, now somehow they like it?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. So, and by the way, in point of fact, this is the way Congress does work. There is a little horse trading that goes on. There is a little, if we will approve the monies for that military base you want in Louisiana if you vote for this. And that's not something that they would put on paper right now. That's the way the Congress works. It is. There's a lot of bartering that goes on. In this case, what specifically changed, if it is something that has to go into the bill to make Medicare worse, Medicaid cuts worse, we will see that, right? That will have to be part of the bill. If it's something that is extra to the bill, we won't necessarily see or know what that is. It could be something as innocuous as like what I just mentioned. The point is, and we'll get into this with Gary Dietrich in a little while, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this bill and how it affects, the federal and state government and how it affects all of us. But the point is that something did change that wooed the very most conservative people in that committee to vote for it, and then presumably get their minions to support it on the floor, because there's in Congress also deference to people who sit on a committee from those who are in the rank and file. So it'll be fascinating to see how that works out.
It will be, and it's just it makes me nervous that that Johnson said, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Nothing to see here. Move along. You're
okay.
Right.
All right. Never mind then. Well,
exactly. Don't worry about it, everybody. We got this. You're good.
Yeah.
There's big controversy over the President Biden's cancer diagnosis. You would think it would be straightforward. Like, this horrible thing has happened. He's got this prostate cancer that is super aggressive, that is metastasized to his bones now. Right. He'll have to undergo some kind of treatment, presumably. And it turns into this thing.
Yeah, well, everything becomes partisan now. And I think because President Biden was president as recently as, 3 or 4 months ago, there is this feeling that, that the fighting hasn't really kicked in. When George H.W. Bush got sick, when Jimmy Carter got sick, things were so distant from when they were big players in politics that it didn't affect it so much. But again, you also have now the most divisive and sort of caustic conversation that we've ever seen in politics coming from the Trump side of things, the MAGA side of things. So it's to be expected. Let's just mention that former President Biden was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer, and stage 4 just means that it is apparently spread to his bones. And that diagnosis came up in a routine exam and a prostate exam where his number was very high, a 9 out of 10, and 9 generally means that that there is aggressive prostate cancer. And then it came to pass that we saw that it's metastasized to his bones. They say there are doctors that say that this can be curtailed by cutting off all testosterone. They used to actually, remove testicles of men who had this, and now there are pills and procedures that can be done to stop the production of testosterone, which could have people living 5-10 years. I mean, he's 82 years old. He's sort of getting to the life expectancy of most men without cancer anyway. So this will certainly complicate things. But, obviously a terrible, terrible piece of news for the former president and for his family. Donald Trump, the president, came out and said in a Truth Social post, I think we can bring that up, Tony, which, we've heard all of the ugly, terrible things the president has said. No, this is Donald Trump Jr. This is the ugly one. This is, okay, Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. That's off of his Truth Social account, which we think, wonderful. And that was the right thing to do. And it bears remarking that he did the right thing at a time when he often hasn't. So, kudos for that. Tammy says cancer doesn't care what your politics are. Shame the NIH and other research has been doged.
Doged.
Doge. Sorry. Yeah. Doge. I was like, doged. Yeah. I have to look at my new Merriam-Webster words.
Right.
So you hear that from President Trump, and the backstory of Trump and Biden. This is the right thing to do, worth pointing that out. Then you go to Donald Trump Jr., who at one point had said something nice about Donald Trump, about Joe Biden. And then later in the day, what I want to know is, how did Dr. Jill Biden miss stage 5 metastatic cancer, or is this yet another cover-up? So, the ugliness it always goes to the ugly. It always goes to that. And Sally says, did you see what Laura Loomer posted? I didn't. I don't follow her. As a matter of fact, I blocked her, mature or otherwise. I don't care what Laura Loomer has to say. But I'm sure it was lovely because it's always lovely from Laura Loomer. But just like, these are the times we live in. Is crazy. An 82-year-old man who was president of the United States, you may not have agreed with, you may not have thought was a good president, you may have thought, lots of things about. Yeah. He was the United States president who, by and large, was according to all, a decent guy, or is a decent guy. And and as CC Ryder says, Biden always releases medical records. Trump never releases his real records. And his doctor, Ronnie Jackson, now a member of Congress, was demoted by the Navy for his behavior in the White House, which is, a stepping stone to the Congress, apparently.
I guess so.
But yeah, and so this is what we said. Here's Laura Loomer. Like I said in July, Biden is terminally ill. Don't forget when I reported on how his brother Frank blurted out that his brother is terminally ill. We look forward to whatever time we have left with Joe Biden. Biden could very well die in the next 2 months.
Oh, she's crazy, that Loomer lady.
She's crazy. Yeah. So could Laura Loomer. So could I. Yeah. So could anybody. I mean, and the president is sick. The former president's sick. Yeah. Take a moment to say that's just terrible, right? This is terrible news that that their family received and that this man received, and they're nuts, right? These people are nuts. Kudos to the president for saying and doing the right thing. I don't know who got a hold of his Truth Social account last night, but it didn't get taken down, which says something.
Right. And there's a lot of people in the chat. They're saying there's no way that Trump, the president, wrote that message. That's way too nice, right?
It's hard to believe, but I will say this, and I don't. I have very little nice to say about the guy, and I'm not saying something nice here. So even if somebody did write it and post it, it's still up there. It wasn't taken down. He had to have approved it in some way, because that Truth Social account, from what I understand from people in his orbit, it's really his domain, and it's what he, that's how he communicates. So I'm not, I'm going to be, I'm going to give one benefit of the doubt here, and he's said horrible things about Biden, and he uses Biden all the time, and he takes no credit for anything. He gives Biden no credit for anything, blames him for everything. But anytime something's good, he takes all the credit. He's not. I'm just saying this was one place where they played the right note.
Until they didn't, because
and that's the wayward son and the
But I mean, it makes a difference.
It does, maybe for sure.
It's not official, but you have Donald Trump Jr. coming out and saying there's some type of cover up or some conspiracy that President Biden has been sick for a lot longer, and that somehow this was some kind of big cover up. I mean, it's so silly. It's an aggressive form of cancer. It could very well have just popped up in a recent test. I don't know why somehow he thinks he's a doctor and can now, decide when it was rearing its ugly head, and how, when we all needed to know about it. It's very interesting.
Right. And that explains MAGA too. It's one person or one family or one person saying something and they all roar in approval. That doesn't happen. That hasn't happened, in American politics in a very long time, where there is just this de facto if they're saying it, I believe it. I believe it to be true. I mean, maybe in the Reagan era, there was a little bit of that, but there was even some questioning of Reagan from within his own party later in his administration. It's not coming from the grassroots yet for Trump. And so now you have Donald Trump Jr. saying things, and that there are people laughing and sharing and reposting and saying, you're damn right. If she's a doctor, how come she didn't find that? I mean, it's stupid. It's really, really ugly. And in an overwhelming way, it's ugly from the president to his family to everybody who's talked about the former president and the way they do that in ways that are personal and dismissive, not in ways that are just political. This time, Trump, the president, said a nice thing, but that doesn't excuse or absolve him from everything else. But at least he said something nice as he's in the president's club here. So we can talk about that with Gary Dietrich too a little bit and what this means. But politically, it doesn't mean very much. There's hand wringing that's going on in the Democratic Party over the president's faculties, the former president's faculties at the end of his term, or when he decided to bow out or stay in the race. And that hand wringing doesn't really matter. It doesn't change anything. And it's that cancer is it would have happened regardless, one would presume. And it's just terribly sad. And we all feel terrible for someone who has that kind of a diagnosis. So we move on then before we get to Gary in a bit here. And I guess we can continue with a little wackiness from the Trump family and from Trump himself, because first of all, this is something from Raw Story. It's America getting punked. Kim, tell us a little bit about this.
I feel like we're getting punked because it's like this comes from the official account of the president. And it just seems so silly and tacky. He posts this AI video of himself basically singing Journey's Don't Stop Believin'. And so he's lip syncing and playing the piano in this AI video of himself with the American flag draped over the piano there. And it's, it's Don't Stop Believin'. It's a very inspirational song. And it looks like he's in this arena full of, 100,000 people or whatever it is. And so it's just, and it's, the video from every angle of Trump made to look like the best American, don't stop believing in America kind of thing. And he posts this on the Truth Social or whatever his social media, his official social media is. So it's not others posting it. It's Donald Trump posting it, which I think is wild. And maybe this is him being funny. I don't know. There he is playing the guitar with his hair, flapping in the wind. It just seems so tacky. I don't know.
It is tacky. I mean, and the tackiness has been enduring. Actually, I mean, that's the all we see is a lot of that tackiness. But we also, we see people. He's selling something constantly, and it's being sold and marketed to people who think that this is fantastic. But he didn't shy away from the music industry entirely over the last several days, because when Bruce Springsteen opened his European tour, he had some sharp words for the president, and then Donald Trump came out on the aforementioned Truth Social and said, "I see that highly overrated Bruce Springsteen goes to a foreign country to speak badly about the president of the United States." Glossing over the fact that he too is currently in a foreign country speaking badly about someone. And then Trump said he's not a talented guy. Bruce Springsteen, many Grammys, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, an Academy Award, a special Tony, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So he's got a little bit of talent, maybe. Yeah. Trump also called Springsteen a pushy, obnoxious jerk, without thinking about who else might be a pushy,
obnoxious jerk.
Jerk, right? And then so Springsteen opened with, "Tonight we ask all who believe in democracy and the best of our American experience to rise with us, raise your voices against authoritarianism, and let freedom ring."
The horror!
And that's
the horror in that statement, Michael. I mean, what is wrong with that?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. It just makes no sense.
He called him a shriveled prune of a man.
Right. It's ugly. I mean, coming from the lead singer of Journey, no less. And then and then there was more because he had a post about Taylor Swift recently, right? I mean, this was again, right? And then so he said he criticized Taylor Swift last week, says she doesn't look as good as she used to, and then he wrote on, I guess it was Saturday, has anyone noticed that since I said I hate Taylor Swift, she's no longer hot? That's what he wrote on Friday. And then, Taylor Swift, who had supported Kamala Harris and said that that Trump shouldn't be president, got into the crosshairs of the president because of that. And that's what happens. I mean, anytime somebody says something against him, he takes it to Truth Social and goes after them. And it's just childish and absurd. So the president had some time in the music industry this week.
He did. And then came out and said that he now wants a major investigation into why some celebrities were lining up to support Kamala Harris in the last election. He called out Bruce Springsteen again, Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, Bono. He said that it seems to him that these people were illegally paid for their endorsements under the guise of performance fees. And again, to Truth Social goes the president, saying, how much did Kamala Harris pay Springsteen for his poor performance during her campaign for president? Why did he accept that money if he is such a fan of hers? Isn't that a major and illegal campaign contribution? What about Beyonce? And how much went to Oprah? How much went to Bono? You know what he doesn't like? He doesn't like that these people came out against him. And so it's part of the Trump retribution tour to somehow make them pay for daring to support the other candidate, for daring to be American and state their opinion, for daring to come out in public and say, don't vote for Trump. Now they're in trouble because of it with him.
Yeah. And there's nobody knows how much people have been paid. There were reports that Beyonce was paid a lot of money. Oprah said she didn't get a cent. So this is, of course, if you say something bad about me, I'm going to come after you. And those sorts of things are the child in our president. John Watson said he's projecting as usual in the chat. He is indeed projecting, but he is someone who does a lot of that, but, to success, right? I mean, he's been reelected to the presidency. He was elected in the first place. People do like this about him. The people that support him, they expect it. So it's, he's Jimmy Buffett singing Margaritaville. If you go to the show, that's what you're going to hear, and that's exactly what people want who are in his camp, and it incenses so many people because of that. Well, we will talk about this and many other things with our guest now, because Gary Dietrich, who joins the show on Mondays, is here with us now. Gary, a lot of politics to cover, a lot of extra political sideshow stuff to cover, but that's what we do here. Thanks for coming to the Mark Thompson Show, and Mark will be back next Monday, but Michael's hanging out with you today.
Hey, good to be with you, Michael. You always do a great job, and there's no, I mean, come on, let's just be honest. We've never seen news cycles like this in politics, at least in my lifetime. You can't get away from it. Even as I say it, you better have your phone on at 2:30 on a Sunday morning, because who knows what's going to happen. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's crazy. It drives a lot of people in the news business, in my own newsroom's nuts. What are we actually going to cover today? And I don't know. You just wonder how the average person, do they take in 15% of this stuff, Michael? Who knows?
Yeah, and who has the time to? Because by the time you're trying to absorb, by the time you're at 4% and you want to get to 15%, there's something else distracting you and taking you and making it more difficult. I mean, you're so right, Gary. I mean, the things that used to consume us, whether they were important pieces of news or not, breaking news doesn't even have a long life anymore, right? I find, let's look at this weekend, that the tragedy of that triple masted ship hitting the Brooklyn Bridge, right? We would have been glued to that for a day or so anyway, but then we have somebody coming in and making comments about a former president's cancer diagnosis. And then Sunday night, we get a vote out of the House. And then, then we move to all the other distractions that are created. It's hard to keep our focus on things that are important. And I think it's also frustrating for people in Congress who are trying to do, without being cynical about Congress, people are trying to do whatever work they're doing for whatever constituency. People aren't paying attention. They're only paying attention to headlines now.
Yeah. And, it's important to step back. I think you make an important point here, Mike. It's important to step back and talk about, just for example, a 10 p.m. Sunday night vote on the president, what is going to be his signature piece of legislation for these 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so how much scrutiny, in other words, is that bill getting on a Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, right? Not very much, right? Because who's staffing the newsrooms? Who at home is watching this? And that's important. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things now. We'll get under a much bigger microscope, actually, when it gets over to the Senate, which I presume at some point it will. Speaker Johnson would like that to happen this week. We'll see. But there's going to be important things to talk about in that bill, right? Because this is going to be the so-called one big beautiful bill that's going to define Trump's legislative legacy. And there's things in there that people are going to want to know about and talk about.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. We're on it, and we talked about it, at the top of the show a little bit, just sort of the big picture stuff that happened. And I agree with you. It's going to get to the Senate. It will be, it'll be chopped up. It'll come back to the House, and I can't see how the House, as we know it, the Republican side is going to support what comes back from the Senate. But stranger things have happened. But the pure politics of this, even if you're a conservative Republican, you still have to run for re-election. And there are purple districts in this country. And it's difficult for many Republicans to support some of these sharp cuts that are happening, because that's when voters step in, because these cuts don't know party or politics. So you can say clean energy cuts, there are over 600 billion of them, are maybe not as partisan, but student loan cuts, over 300 billion, food stamp cuts, over 300 billion, big major cuts to Medicare. They're saying nearly $700 billion. So these types of cuts are the kind of cuts that are going to play politics, aren't they?
Well, they are, but let's take the one thing you kind of said, well, this isn't so partisan. A bunch of the things you're talking about, Michael, will have big ramifications for people trying to run those purple districts. But just take that so-called clean energy piece, right?
Yeah.
A conservative Republican from the Midwest has come out today and said, hey, not so fast. My area of the country is very concerned about wind energy. A lot of wind turbines have gone up in the Midwest, and biofuels, right? Corn, ethanol-based biofuels. They don't want to see those chopped out of federal spending. So this is not going to be easy sledding, either getting these through moderate Republicans who are staring down tough re-election battles next year, but even conservative Republicans in these red districts who may not be threatened politically, but don't want to go back to their constituents and say, well, yeah, I guess you corn farmers are out of luck. They don't want to have to do that.
Yeah, there's no question. And I didn't even mean to gloss over it. I'm talking about what, the issues that hit voters of every stripe. So, and clean energy, while important, and it fluctuates in importance as to when you ask voters what their number one issue is. But yeah, in practical terms, clean energy is a massive industry, and it employs many, many people, and it doesn't know politics when it comes to what district, as you said, Gary, wind turbines go up in some of, because of all the wide open spaces in some of the reddest parts of this country, and they employ people, and they bring a lot of value added to those districts. So the members of Congress are loath to go against them because of what that would mean to them in re-election, and that's the currency of their business, right?
Right, absolutely. And then I don't know if we're going to touch on this or not, but just to go back to that news cycle thing, I mean, the whipsaw over former President Biden in the last 3 or 4 days. I mean, absolutely remarkable, right? I mean, you've got, of course, people in his own party. The Tapper book comes out, I guess, officially tomorrow, although half of it, like it's already been leaked. You know, that has a lot of Democrats even more incensed. Now, all of a sudden, the cancer diagnosis comes out for the former president. You know, that's tragic in its own right, again. But does that now officially sort of put to bed the whole Biden argument internally to Democrats that say, okay, listen, this proves it. He was old. Thank goodness. You know, what if he had this cancer diagnosis when he's 3 months into a new term, right? So, I mean, it's just unbelievable. You know, that thread right there, you know, could consume half of every newscast over the next week, and there probably won't be time for that to happen.
No, it won't. I mean, you look at, like, they released the tapes of that interview with the special prosecutor, special counsel, and that's faded into the ether now, right? I mean, those are the sort of things that would have legs and matter. I guess because in practical sense, it doesn't matter either. Whatever, you know, Joe Biden's no longer president. Donald Trump is president, and the things that happened, and that's real Democratic self-haranguing and hand-wringing, and the party thinking, did we do it right? Did we not do it right? But the mere fact that would have been compelling at another time. And I blame the media too. I mean, I'm part of the media, and the way that newsrooms select which stories they're going to cover and for how long. And then they also are the ones that have the attention spans of goldfish sometimes too, where they turn around and they look at the next shiny object. But you know, I want to go and the Biden stuff, but we can stay on it for a moment here. I don't want to leave the big, beautiful bill, as the president calls it. But in terms of Biden and in terms of what this means, I'm wondering, and because I think fairly optimistically sometimes, does the vulnerability of Biden as finally an older, sick man kind of take down the volume on criticizing him at every turn for a lot of his most virulent opponents? Do you think that can happen?
Well, I think there's two things happening, Michael. One is, I think, you know, for some people, this is going to go ahead and put the icing on the cake. See, we told you he was old, in fact, really old. Now he's got a potentially life-threatening infirmity. We'll see where his, you know, prognosis goes. But, you know, I think for some people, it's like, okay, Joe was old. Now we know the HER tapes have come out, the cancer diagnosis. Yeah, let's just forget about that. But I'll take matters a lot for, and that is for the people who are closest to him, who have a political future, i.e. Kamala Harris. Okay. This is a big deal for her still, and it's not going to be easily put to bed, because the questions, you know, Joe's not running again for anything, obviously, but those closest to him, I'd pick out two figures in particular, Michael. One is Kamala Harris, who, of course, right now is weighing either California governor or 2028. And one of those two, I'm convinced she's going to go for. I have my own, you know, sort of inclinations about that. We'll save that for another day. But she's got a political future. The other one is Chuck Schumer. And is he going
I'm going to interrupt you here for 1 second, Gary. As a reporter, when I'm interviewing a politician, they say, we'll save that for another day. It's I cannot not interrupt and say, no, we're here today. We're talking. I want to know what Gary Dietrich's inclinations here are about the former vice president.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there was a new report that came out over the weekend. She's here, she's there, she's everywhere. Honestly, Michael, it could go either way. My gut tells me she's more likely to run for California governor. Number one, she's more of a sure thing there. Not a certainty by any stretch of the imagination, but I think far more certain to win that office than she is 2028 presidential at this point. And secondly, it's there right now, right? I mean, does she want to wait 3.5 years? That's a long time in politics, especially as we've been talking about today, an eternity in modern politics. I think she jumps into the California governor's race. That's my gut about it, but she could go either way. So that's the deal.
I agree with you. I completely agree. And sorry to put you on the spot there, but let's but you started to talk about Senator Schumer when I interrupted you. So
okay. I mean, I just think the other person, along with Harris, who was so close to the president, of course, and defended him to the hilt. Maybe she felt like she had to, but now she is Ricky Ricardo famous. He said has some splaining to do. All right, but the other one is Chuck Schumer. I mean, I think he's in a very, very tenuous position. Anybody who says, well, Chuck didn't know, come on. He was talking to the White House constantly. And I think this thing about a potential primary for him, or people really saying, Chuck, your time is done. Either AOC is going to take you out or it's time for you to retire. I think that's very real. And, I think he's the other guy that probably politically right now, it has the most vulnerability still sitting out there due to Biden.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it also speaks a little bit to our politics in this country in general, not the politics themselves, but the way we are, as we hate to abandon somebody, whether that's human nature or not. But certainly in politics, you don't want to be the person who steps in and says Biden shouldn't run, right? Because that will come back to haunt you with the rest of the Democrats. I think Schumer, to his credit, was a little pushier than others about it. And in terms of rhetoric, he also served with Biden and knew Biden for a very long time. And it puts people in very, very odd positions. I agree that I don't know that I think I'm thinking as I'm speaking, but in my opinion, I think that Schumer's more likely not to run if he's going to be primaried, or to step down from leadership, which I think would kind of avoid a primary if he wants to stay in the Senate, because there are people that he likes that want that job as well. I think of Brian Schatz, the senator from Hawaii, possibly Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, but I think less so. So I do think that there are ways that Chuck Schumer gets out of the conundrum he's in, if you want to call it that. I don't believe he thinks he's in one, but that's the problem with politics, is that politicians, they don't realize it until it's too late very often.
Yeah, he clearly doesn't think he's in one. But I'll tell you, a good half of his party, with this giant capital progressive, in front of their name, do. I mean, he's become the face of angst for the progressives right now. Much more so than Hakeem Jeffries, who doesn't have the kind of, some people would say, political maneuvering room. Although really, the Republicans right now are making it really tough on Schumer to gain any traction, even in the Senate, on things. He can pound the podium, but in terms of actual tools, if they're able to use reconciliation on the big beautiful bill, then that takes weapons out of his hands. But he right now, if people are looking for sort of a political whipping boy, it's clear it's Schumer right now. We'll see what happens 12, 18 months from now.
Yeah, and I also think that look, having a man in his mid-70s looking over reading glasses, standing at the podium, is not the look Democrats want right now. And I don't mean that as an indictment to people who would need to do that and look over reading glasses and whatever. But I think that the party is realizing they need to be younger than Joe Biden, their last standard bearer, and they need to go forward with a little more energy. And the same old is not going to work. So I think that it's beyond just what the Republicans and others are doing to Schumer. Look, it's not an easy job to be a minority leader of either house, but I do think that there's something to be said for the optics of what the Democrats want to portray. It's more like Hakeem Jeffries and less like Chuck Schumer, I think.
Yep, I think you're exactly right.
Let's awkwardly go back to that bill, because we left it before we talked a little bit about it, because I want to talk about what it means on a state level, and the SALT part of this. If you could explain that and tell me why you have Republicans in California and Republicans in New York who could make trouble for this bill when it comes back to the House.
Yeah. Well, SALT, for people, don't think back to the Reagan days with the SALT nuclear treaties.
Right.
This is state and local taxes. That's what that acronym stands for. And why it's a big deal in blue states is deductibility of those taxes. Okay. Especially for high income earners. How much is that going to be included in the Trump tax provisions, part of the big beautiful bill? How much is it not? That's the big bugaboo. And yes, even Republicans in some of these blue states say, wait a minute, I got some wealthy donor types who want these deductions basically in there and in large amounts. Okay. State tax deduction. That's what that's about. And the other big thing sitting out there that's a real problem, even as Gavin Newsom presented his own California state budget last week, is these potentially very large Medicaid cuts. You know, Gavin Newsom already announced he's cutting $5-6 billion out of California's budget, putting a cap on, saying no more undocumented folks can jump into Medicaid as of January 1 this coming year. All this is going to be a huge problem. I mean, I think those are the two big things sitting out there for blue state people that are probably the most, have the biggest red flags on them right now.
And it's so important because those are the things that may end up upending this bill when it comes back to the House. Maybe even getting out of the House, it's going to be trouble because you've got a couple of Nick LaLota and Mike Lawler. You have two New York Republicans who have spoken against it because of that reason. Even in California, you've had a couple. Ken Calvert, I think, has been talking about how he has problems with it, a California rep, and one, I don't know if it was Valadeo or one of the other Republicans who were saying that they have problems with it as well in California. So when you talk about just a couple of Republicans, you have to realize that's what can make the difference on a vote in this House, in this so evenly divided House of Representatives right now, which is interesting. You brought up Governor Newsom. I think important. We talked about the governor's race. We talked about the presidential race. One of the reasons that Kamala Harris, I believe, would run for governor before she would run for president is that it's fairly clear that Governor Newsom will run for president in 2028. I mean, I believe that that's going to happen. And I think I'm not alone. That going up against his fundraising in this state, for people who've already written big checks to Kamala Harris, who will have written them for her presidential race, who didn't get what they wanted, I think that Gavin Newsom has a leg up in his home state. Running against another California would not necessarily be the best thing for the former vice president. Tell me about where you like. There's not a news cycle that goes by without Gavin Newsom doing something subtle or something major in terms of national policy. Right now, he's talking about immigrants and healthcare. What do you make of all that?
Well, his immigrant and healthcare take last week, which is, again, this cutting of $6 billion out of Medicaid directed towards undocumented folks, in many people's view, continues what Gavin Newsom's been doing this year, which is push towards the center, pushing more moderate. I mean, that's something that conservatives want to see happen. What do you announce, right? So his podcast with Charlie Kirk and all the rest of the conservatives, I mean, saying to Kirk on that podcast, yeah, I think it's, it's deeply unfair that there's trans males in women's sports. I mean, all of these things combined are what many people are saying. Look, of course, he's getting ready to run in purple states. He's got to get the Midwest tier, the northern tier. He's got to say this stuff. And, you can't have, San Francisco, California liberal Kamala Harris. He does not want to be in that mold that is Gavin Newsom, right? So,
but is the cake not already baked on Gavin Newsom? I mean, or do we have that perspective? I mean, he was the mayor of San Francisco himself, and he is somebody who was, to his great credit on social issues, ahead of the curve, ahead of Barack Obama on gay marriage, ahead of Joe Biden. I mean, so it seems as if all of the sort of liberal, progressive, whatever word you want to use, currency that he has built up it seems like that's already baked in, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I mean, the Newsom people obviously think differently. They think they're short minds in politics. And after all, they're going to say we're 3.5 years from a presidential election. A lot can happen then, right? I mean, he continues to set himself up as the anti-Trump voice. Remember, that was how he kind of cut his teeth over the last year, going on Hannity, debating Governor DeSantis from Florida. I mean, so he's kind of got this twofold thing he's trying to do. One is, listen, I'm the best advocate you've got against MAGA Trumpism. And, oh, by the way, I might be more palatable liberal than you guys think. So I don't know that the second half of that is really selling very well. And there's an interesting poll that came out from the LA Times that 2/3 of Californians now say he is spending too much time on non-California matters. He's basically running for president. We need a governor. What gives? I mean, this California, the Los Angeles fire rebuild is sitting out there, not to mention a $12 billion budget gap in the coming fiscal year. There's a lot of people, really starting to scream through some pretty loud megaphones. Hey, Gavin, by the way, you're still governor for almost 2 more years.
Right. I mean, that's the catch that anyone who was in that office. I remember Mike Dukakis when he was running for president. He spent every day in Boston as governor of Massachusetts, and he got criticized like crazy from the National Party. Why are you still governor? This is not going to be your job soon, or you go back to it. But for a while, you have to take a time out. So it's kind of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in that way. And I think mentally that Newsom has moved past that a little bit, and I would imagine that if he ran for president, he would still win California. He's won it several times in recalls and otherwise. But there are plenty of surprises ahead. So, Gary, thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for helping me and this audience digest what's going on a state level and on a national level with the bill that came out of the Congress on a late Sunday night, which is always has its charm, right? When you're at the House of Representatives, when you're on Capitol Hill late Sunday night, and all the canteens are closed, but it's and these guys are still in there, and women are doing these bills, and then they come out with it somehow. We're not going to see what the result of that was. I was talking about it with Kim earlier, and before I let you go, why don't you weigh in on this? That the notion is we don't know what changed for these four conservatives who voted for this bill at the end. Johnson said that it's fine. You'll learn it later or not. But you don't have to know these things, because often they're promises that are made for things down the road, right?
Yeah, well, and interestingly, importantly, you and Kim may have talked about this. They did not vote in support of the bill. They voted "quote unquote" present, which means I'm here. I want my constituents to know I'm listening. I mean, and what's trickling out today is basically they were told, listen, we hear you, but we can't get this done tonight. So this is going to Rules Committee, and then it's going to, go to the full House. We will address your concerns this week. That's apparently what they were promised. And so they said, okay, we won't oppose it. We'll vote present. But that also means we ain't in support of this thing yet.
Yeah, that's a very, very important piece that you've just added that we didn't add before, which is, in fact, that they went from no votes to present, but they didn't vote in favor of it. It gets it out of committee, and that's why Arrington, the budget chair, was so happy, because it gets to the floor. But that doesn't mean that they're supporting it, and there's got to be stuff that happens between now and then that will get their support. In theory, we can assume that they were promised some of that. So thank you, Gary Dietrich, at bottom of the ninth, helping us out with the fact that we didn't go over. Gary, thanks so much. CBS Television, iHeart Radio's political analyst. You'll see Mark back here on Monday, but I hope to see you soon, Gary.
Okay, have a great show, Michael.
Thanks so much. Gary Dietrich's segment is sponsored by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you're relocating into or from Northern California, you need a highly respected real estate professional like Bill Campbell of Remax Gold. Call or text Bill at 530-448-7474. That's 530-448-7474.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi. That was a great interview. Loved it.
Gary was great. Gary was terrific. I think that it was, and what he said there at the end was super important too. Is that those were present votes, those weren't no votes, and that's important. I think. Do we have time for a little bit of news now, Kim, and then we'll come back and cover some stories?
I love it.
All right, let's do it. This is Kim McAllister with the news.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The National Transportation Safety Board is expected to give an update today on the investigation into that deadly crash that happened on Saturday of a Mexican Navy ship right into the Brooklyn Bridge. You can see video of that here. Incredible. There were reports that this ship lost power and then drifted backward into the bridge. That not confirmed, but that is one of the things they're thinking may have been the case. The Mexican Navy confirms 2 people died, more than a dozen were injured. This ship is now docked at Pier 36, where there was a huge gathering last night to mourn the victims. There is close-up video of this where you can see that on each one of those kind of rungs going up the mast, there were spaced out members of what appeared to be the Mexican Navy that were riding on the mast. And so when it knocked into the bridge, people were flung backwards and hanging on for dear life. So it's a pretty scary situation as one topples and then the next and then the next. There were also people standing on the park on the area next to the bridge that took video from every angle of this. So there's new information about the man who died in what is believed to be an intentional bombing outside of a fertility clinic in California. This man is being identified by the FBI as 25-year-old Guy Bartkus. He was reportedly driven by something called anti-natalist ideology. It's the belief that there are too many people being born. So I guess contrary to what Elon Musk is thinking, right? The FBI believes that this man intentionally targeted this reproductive center in Palm Springs. It was not an abortion clinic. It was a reproductive health center where you would go to have in vitro or some type of procedure to help you have a child. Bartkus reportedly left an online manifesto threatening the attack and mentioning a war against pro-lifers. President Trump says he believes his call with Russian President Vladimir Putin about the war with Ukraine went very well today. In a post on Truth Social, Trump saying peace negotiations between the two countries will start immediately. The two leaders spoke for almost 2 hours Monday, Trump suggesting the talks could take place at the Vatican. According to Russian media, Putin called the talks frank and substantive. The Supreme Court is handing President Trump a partial victory in regards to the status of Venezuelan migrants. The High Court lifting a lower court's injunction that blocked the termination of a program protecting some migrants today. This allows the Trump administration to revoke the temporary protected status program for about 350,000 Venezuelan immigrants as legal proceedings in those cases continue. The United States military will be conducting a test launch of an unarmed nuclear missile from North Santa Barbara County tonight or sometime this week. The launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base is scheduled for sometime early Wednesday morning. More specific there, the weapon being tested, a Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, and military officials say the launch is routine and that this had been scheduled years in advance. The president of CBS News stepping down from the role as the network deals with a $20 billion lawsuit filed by President Trump. Wendy McMahon said in a memo to CBS News staff that leading the organization has been a privilege and a joy, but said the last few months have been super challenging. Trump suing CBS News, saying 60 Minutes edited a pre-election interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris. The Vatican, there it is, the Vatican says Pope Leo XIV and Vice President J.D. Vance met for cordial talks while he attended the Pope's first Mass over the weekend. According to the Vatican, Vance and the Pope discussed the issues of religion and religious freedom, as well as exchanging views on international issues. During the meeting, Vance also passed along a letter from President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, extending their warm wishes and inviting the Pope to visit the White House. Don't you think, don't touch the new Pope. You didn't have good luck with the last one. Step away from the Pope, Vance. No, but that happened anyway. Los Angeles is all alone in its budget crisis. The city facing a nearly $1 billion budget shortfall because of higher personnel costs, lower revenues, and high liability payouts. And Governor Gavin Newsom says the state is not in a position to write a check here. The state itself dealing with a $12 billion budget hole. The governor says it's a non-starter when LA is asking for help with things that don't deal with disaster recovery. The Mayor Bass in Los Angeles telling the LA Times the state will help with the budget deficit would be related to wildlife recovery, and that's all. So only in that regard. Netflix will show viewers the way to Sesame Street later this year. The streaming giant announcing today it has reached a deal for the exclusive worldwide premiere rights for the long-running children's show. Episodes of the show's 56th season will hit Netflix the same day they premiere on PBS stations. Maybe, I don't think PBS is going away, but with the lack of government funding, it's nice to see that maybe they have an exit ramp with Netflix. Because I don't know what the world would be without Sesame Street, Michael, but I don't want to think about it. No,
I can't either. I'm part of the Sesame Street generation.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
The double feature, Mr. Rogers right afterwards.
Exactly. The city of Los Angeles, paying tribute to Malcolm X, street signs dedicated to the civil rights activist were unveiled this last weekend in Leimert Park. The unveiling took place on what would have been Malcolm X's 100th birthday, and the celebration followed by the 33rd Malcolm X Festival. A 5-mile stretch of Crenshaw Boulevard will now be known as Malcolm X Way. The Gilroy Garlic Festival is coming back. I know, Michael Shure, you couldn't wait to get back to that. They had a multi-year absence. First, it was there
was a shooting. Yeah, there was a shooting there. Yeah,
the mass shooting, and then the pandemic came, and then there was financial issues, and now finally, the Gilroy Garlic Festival returns. It'll take place at a new location in the form of Gilroy Gardens, South County Grove, July 25th through the 27th. Got to go get your garlic ice cream and your garlic everything, right?
Absolutely.
Lastly, speaking of the Pope, the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum has released its Pope Leo XIV bobblehead. I know. You're thinking, how can I get one of these? Well, doesn't everybody want a Pope bobblehead? It features Pope Leo, the American cardinal, elected May 8th, and becoming the Chicago native, the very first American pope elected to the papacy. The bobblehead folks say this is a high quality piece of gear produced by the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum. It is 8 inches tall, and it will cost you $30. And there it is.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah.
It's not the only piece of Pope gear, though, because before the show, you and Tony were talking about baseball jerseys and baseball items that had Pope Leo.
Yeah, I mean, Pope Leo, of course, is known as a White Sox fan. There's this video of him at a White Sox playoff game in the early 2000s, and he is from the south side of Chicago, and that is where the White Sox play. And now, yep, there's a Pope Leo in his White Sox papal outfit. Yep, White Sox proudly congratulate the South Side's very own Pope Leo XIV. It is a big thing. He's a Sox fan. There you see the Leo there. There's all kinds of fun gear for fans of both the papacy and the White Sox. Look at that. That's intense.
That's fancy.
That is really fancy. I mean, that's where you dress up for the White Sox game. That's for the Sunday game. But yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that people get crazy excited about, knowing things about the Pope. And we'll talk about this with Patrick McEnroe. He had the Pope had Yannick Sinner in, the number one player in the world, tennis player in the world, and they were holding tennis rackets. There's a video of that where they were sort of and Sinner said we could play right here, and the Pope said, I just got here, we can't really play. It's we're indoors and we got to respect. This isn't the best place to play, and they had a laugh. But there's a lot about sports that it has informed the Pope's life as an aside to the papacy, to the church and all that. So
sure,
it's part of the personality of the new Pope.
Well, there you go. And making money off of it is the American way.
Right. So yeah, there you see Sinner and the Pope, and we'll talk about that with Patrick later. But yeah, it's there's the Pope grabbing a racket. He is a tennis player apparently. So
all right.
Yeah. And it's pretty great to see the new Pope, and I think this is sort of what makes having an American Pope so unique, as you can talk about the White Sox, which is something we don't talk about enough. This is not my 48 seconds of sports. We're scrapping that today because we've got a sport. We have a sports related guest.
We have a whole half hour of sports coming up.
Yes, we do. Yeah, and as Karen Cooper points out, there's a tennis court at the Vatican, and we can talk to Patrick about that as well. Also, thank you to Harry, who said surely one of the best hosts. So, well, thank you very much.
Nice.
I appreciate that. And but more than that, I appreciate the donation to the show and everything that they do here, that Mark does here with Kim and Tony and Albert and everybody else. So, and also, one of the best hosts, as far as I know. Aren't there just a couple?
Yeah, there really are just a couple of fill-ins, and so, you are surely one of the best.
Lovely to say, but I'm also one of the worst. So there's that. Okay, so let's.
But let me tell you that this report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee, because we cannot end the newscast without talking about the beauty, the deliciousness, the amazingness of CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. As a matter of fact, I'm just thinking of putting in my next order for all of my vanilla tea and my Moroccan mint tea. The coffee there, the best Mark has ever tasted. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Please check out this website. They have very extensive tasting notes. They'll let you know exactly what it is that you're going to purchase. And then make sure that you take advantage of the Mark Thompson Show exclusive discount, 10% off Mark T at checkout. No spaces there. Mark T will get you 10% off at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is the Mark Thompson Show.
Thanks, Kim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well done. Good news. I still don't have a mug. Thought I'd share that. I'm not going to make a whole big stink about it, but like the Pope, I have a nice white mug.
It's getting ridiculous. Come on.
It's getting ridiculous. But yeah, I have to mention it, but you don't want to, scratch the itch too much. We one of the things about what I watched some of the Pope's first inaugural mass yesterday, and I'm a fan of pomp and circumstance. I like watching the king's coronation. I find a lot of it obviously very silly.
Wait, are you Catholic?
I'm not Catholic. No, okay. I'm not Catholic, and nor am I British. But
okay, but you still watched it. All right.
But I'm an interested person all the time, and so I watched it because I thought it was interesting, and it is interesting. I mean, the Vatican and its history, and whatever you think of it, and I'm not going to opine on it. I just think it's interesting. But all of the traditions that he knows already. It's like they didn't have any time to rehearse this stuff, right? If this were a play, they would have been in rehearsal for 6 weeks. He became Pope like an hour ago, and now he's already knowing all the things he's supposed to say, and he's holding it, and he knows like how to throw the incense and all. I was blown away by that and the importance with which he's held.
How different is it to be, to run your own church, which he has done in multiple locations, versus to do it at the Pope level? I mean, are there different things you have to do, or is holding mass no matter where you hold it?
Right. Was it like Air Force One, whatever plane the president's on is Air Force One? I don't know. See, I'm not a Catholic, so I don't know those things. And I don't watch a lot. I once every like 7 years, I go to midnight mass on Christmas because I think it's, beautiful and interesting, and just to do it, and because it's something to do at midnight. But I think that the tradition of seeing this stuff and knowing that it could be 30 years or 10 days before it happens again. Remember, Pope John Paul I was Pope for a month, I think, right? Sylvain Coiffon says religion is a cash grab to me. I don't disagree. I'm just saying it's interesting. I'm not judging it or anything. Look at this. Look at these people, and they're so devoted, and they've changed their lives and given it to something, and it's spectacular looking. And look at all the money. And the Vatican is a country, right? I mean, it's a country of 900 people. So, but I find it interesting. There's the Pope in the Pope-mobile, which I learned yesterday too that John Paul I was the last Pope to go on that thing with, it has a name, but it was that they carried him around on, and he waved to the crowds. And then from then on, they invented the Pope-mobile, and that was it. Tammy says, everything I know about the Pope, I learned from Father Guido Sarducci, of course, from Saturday Night Live. Don Novello's character, fantastic. And I love Father Guido Sarducci. He was fantastic. But anyway, so now we have a Pope, and I'm not going to spend as much time with the Pope as I have over the last week, but I've enjoyed his ascent and seeing all of this that we're seeing right here, which has been fun. And then what's that?
I thought the whole point of the Pope-mobile was so they could ride down in there and have bullet protected glass. But here he is standing up and waving to the crowd in the free air. That doesn't seem Yeah.
Well, I know, and the Pope John Paul II was there was an assassination attempt while Pope-mobiling, but I don't know that it was about security as much as it's about. I mean, the Pope's got to be with the flock, I guess, right?
I
And
guess
so,
so.
and I think there's a great deal of security getting into St. Peter's Square when the Pope is going to be doing this sort of thing. So but I mean, the other day he was just a guy talking to his brother on the phone, and his brothers are great too. I mean, he's got this one MAGA crazy brother, well, just nuts, and then he's got this other brother who he didn't answer his phone when the Pope was calling after he'd been named. I don't know, I just think it's all, and then this guy's like, billions of people know who he is now, and he's just this guy from the south side of Chicago. I just think it's very, very funny and interesting.
Yeah, you must have to sit through mass. That's crazy.
Well, but I didn't sit through it. It was hours and hours. I watched a finite portion of it when he got the ring, and when the other cardinals came up and knelt and kissed the ring and all of that, and then a little bit of this. I didn't watch the entire mass. There's a fast forward button, Kim. I'll teach you about it later. It's great for mass and coronations. Coronations are like mass, but they're fascinating. They're interesting to me.
That's cool.
It doesn't mean that I also don't have time to watch Meet the Press, Kim. How's that for a segue, right?
That's really, really good, because Mike Pence was on Meet the Press over the weekend, and I wonder if he's doing appearances like this, does this mean he's going to run for president the next time?
I don't know.
2028?
I don't know. I think when you want to be president, you don't stop wanting to be president. And I think he took the vice presidency thinking that it would be an avenue toward the presidency. I don't think that the problem, even when Trump is off the stage, is in order to keep some of his voters engaged, you're going to have to be somewhat pro-Trump. And I learned, on the road, and I learned, and stuff that anybody knows, people who watch the show knows, is that a lot of the MAGA set have had it with Mike Pence, and that they think that he was a turncoat and a traitor on January 6th. And by making that election official, he was everything that was wrong with the country. But he did speak with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press, and let's take a listen to what the former vice president had to say, both, moderating a little bit of what he had said about Trump in the past, but talking critically as well.
The country rich, and yet you have said, you've called them the Trump tariff tax. Why?
Well, first off, the initial reciprocal tariffs that he unveiled would be the largest peacetime tax hike on the American people in the history of this country. As I said, I'm glad he's paused that. And as we're seated here, I understand the president is going to make an offer to 150 countries. But look, he and I talked many times about trade. Here in Indiana, we're one of the leading exporting states in the country. What we make here, what we grow and raise here, we sell around the world. I've always believed that trade means jobs, but I came to respect President Trump's willingness to use the threat of tariffs to negotiate, as we did with the new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. We renegotiated South Korea. We were well down the road of a trade agreement with Japan, with the UK, with the EU during our time. But there's no question in this administration that he is surrounded, it appears to me, with people that nurture his more protectionist instincts. And as the president has said to me many times, he has a sense that other countries pay tariffs, when the reality is, when Americans buy goods overseas, the company that imports those goods in this country pays the tariff, and more often than not, passes that along in higher prices to consumers. And I worry about inflation. We just heard Walmart made the announcement that they'll be raising prices in the wake of these tariffs. My view of tariffs overall is this: we ought to be aggressively negotiating for free trade with free nations. We ought to use the threat of leverage to bring down trade barriers and subsidies.
Well, to that point, let me ask you about the tariffs from the first term. They added some $80 billion in higher prices for Americans, increased prices on things like tires and washing machines. Why didn't you say their attacks during the first administration.
Well, I probably did in the hallways, but the president gets to make the
You
decision.
told President Trump that directly?
Well, sure.
How
But
did
look,
he respond?
Look, when you're vice president of the United States, my view was always this. I'd favor the president with the full range of my opinion in private. And then when he made the decision, my job was to support his decision, absent some higher calling or higher obligation that one has. And I fully supported his approach on tariffs, but I was never confused about who pays tariffs.
Well, there you have Mike Pence. Interesting stuff. First of all, I'm just going to step in and say I think Kristen Welker is doing a very good job at Meet the Press. I've watched several hosts there since Tim Russert, and she seems to really have embraced it and does a good job, especially with her high-profile interviews. Imperfect, obviously, but I think doing quite a good job in that seat. Moving now to Pence, and your question, your topic question, which was, is he running for president?
Yep.
Mike Pence is very, very far to the right on social issues, and there is an audience for that, but he, I think, damaged himself too much with MAGA, and I think you can only go so far with that conservative, religious conservatism in the Republican Party, even in the Republican Party. You saw it with Rick Santorum, you saw it with Mike Huckabee. Yeah, he was the vice president, and I think that speaks a lot more than Senator Santorum or Governor Huckabee did. But I don't think that it can get you as far as you want in terms of a national campaign, or even in terms of the fire that you need to win a primary. He certainly doesn't exude that. He's interesting in that he did stand up to the president on January 6th. He did his job. He gets a lot of credit for that, but that's what he was supposed to do also.
Right.
And that though is poison to so many people whose support he would need to make it to get to the nomination. So I don't think he was the right choice for vice president for Trump. I don't think that the Republicans would pick him for president.
So is he done politically then? What's his next move after that? I mean, if he's kind of, I don't know, has the, disappointment of the Republicans, that many Republicans won't support him. He doesn't, he's a pariah to MAGA. Democrats aren't going to support him. What's his next move? What's his future? Is he done?
Well, I mean, I don't know that he's done necessarily, but I don't see. I don't like if the presidency is what he wants. I would think he's done. He could still run in Indiana for the Senate, but I don't. He'd be running. There are two Republicans, both of them young, so one would have to step down, and I don't see that happening. So there isn't very much for him to do other than run for president, and I don't think that's going to work out well for him. But these people who are finished in politics certainly find ways to earn money, as we know. And Mike Pence is probably, I don't know, in his mid 60s. He's already been governor of his own state. He was a member of the House. I don't really see any avenue for him to go down that would be, worthwhile other than president.
And isn't it interesting, because he just received the JFK Profile and Courage Award, celebrating that moment where he stood up and did what was right, as you say, just did his job, basically, right? But it could have gone a different way. Admittedly, he may have saved democracy in that moment where he stood up and did the right thing. And
right.
and a great risk to his life as he's running. I remember the video, Michael, of him running down the hallways, and they're saying, get in the car. And he's like, I have to, do my job, or whatever it was. And I just feel like that the next move for him is what? Nothing?
Well,
get the award and go quietly away into the sunset.
Or go make a paycheck working for, some foundation, a right-wing foundation, a religious foundation. I don't think he had a radio show for many years. He could still go on and do that. I mean, that's where he was before he was in the House, or maybe between House and governor. I don't recall the chronology of it, but I mean, and not everybody, moves on from the vice presidency, right? Al Gore didn't, Dan Quayle didn't. It's not the job it used to be in that way. And so, and Joe Biden did it in a very unusual way because it skipped a term, and then there was a pandemic, and then there was a president who was, not beloved. So a lot has to go right. I don't think Mike Pence is the person that they're going to turn to. He's not firebrand enough, and that party is now about firebrand and not just about genteel rhetoric when it comes to politics.
Something happened. I think it was on Friday. We got downgraded by Moody's.
Yeah.
And I think it's a sign that, our economy isn't doing well, but I'm not sure how much it matters in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't matter to the man and woman on the street. They don't know anything about that. But it did matter to the markets, because when there was a question about our debt, and we were Moody's who assigns grades, and we had AAA grade in the United States, which means that our credit is AAA. It moved down to AA1, I think, or 1AA. I'm not sure the order of those. And it's because we have such rising debt. And this big, beautiful bill that we've been talking about, you and I, with Gary Dietrich as well, that is not going to take away any of our debt. There's not a lot of debt relief in there as it stands anyway, even though there's a cut to a lot of what we are spending. Those cuts are being made up by tax cuts as well, and that tax cuts create this debt. So I think a lot of the problem that we're going to be seeing is going to be with debt, and I guess Moody's saw that as well. And the markets don't like that, right? I mean, this president and this administration hasn't made the markets terribly comfortable, from the tariffs onto the Moody's rating and the debt crisis. So I think that's really what it's about. And I think that there are reasons to be scared. They also said they changed its outlook on the U.S. to stable from negative, which means, which is counter to what the first part is, but it just means that they're not pessimistic necessarily. Maybe that's market protective. I don't know enough about how they come up with that, but it's a problem for the country and for the markets when there is uncertainty. And the president also, the uncertainty comes from these tariffs, and he went after Walmart. Right.
Right after he went after Amazon. Remember that Jeff Bezos was going to put this was the price, and now this is the price that you're going to pay with tariffs, and Trump didn't want that.
Right. And he then went after these retailers. He went after Amazon. He's gone after Walmart for basically telling the truth about why their prices are going up. Their prices, they say, are going up because of the tariffs, and someone from Walmart said it's more than any supplier can absorb, and I'm concerned that the consumer is going to start seeing higher prices. I mean, that's exactly what's happening now, is that higher prices are manifesting in these big box stores where people used to go for lower prices, but they can't work around the tariffs, and that's what's happening right now.
And President Trump is mad that Walmart would have the audacity to step forward and say, hey, we're going to try to keep our prices as low as we can, but we've got this tariff situation and you're going to see prices rise. I mean, what do you want them to say? What do you want them to tell their customers? Or what does Trump want them to tell their customers? Just don't talk about it. Just quietly raise prices and don't blame anyone.
Well, he wants the administration's company line, which is it's going to get better soon. We have to do this to make things better, right? That we have to take a little bit of medicine now so that we get better later. And people don't, people aren't buying into that in many circles. Some did that with when they put tariffs on soybeans and things like that in the first Trump administration. A lot of the farmers it's going to be tough for us for a while, but we think this is the right path. I spoke to some of those farmers in 2017, 2018, and then I spoke to them during the election last year, and to a person, each one of those farmers said, yeah, it didn't work out the way we had hoped. And it really hurt us. So, we'll see how this happens, but that's what Trump wants the retailers to say. He wants everybody to put his line in front of their line, which is that we've got to do this now. Karen Cooper says people will notice the rise in prices, whether it's pointed out by Amazon or Walmart or not. Yeah, they'll notice them, but but Amazon and Walmart don't want to be the object of the ire of the consumer, and they don't want people not to come in the door. They want to say, look, there's nothing we can do. We got to raise the prices because of these tariffs. And so by being frank with them, the president's saying, hey, don't tell the truth. Don't do that. You know, it's and in a related way, SP as he writes, remember, Trump wanted the COVID testing to stop because he didn't want people to know how bad the pandemic was, right? Hide the problem, and then you don't need to have a solution is kind of the way he looks at things. And it's, you know, it explains why he's gone after retailers in the way, like you said, he went after Amazon, and now he's gone after Walmart for the same reason. And those are, you know, Bezos, as you mentioned, a supporter of the president's, and Walmart historically has been supporter of Republicans and conservative causes. The Walton family has anyway. Their team, I don't know, but yeah. So. What's that? Go ahead.
Oh no, go. You finish. I'm sorry. I have a new story that just broke.
Let's go to a new story. We don't need to talk about Amazon and Walmart.
I want to tell you that you remember that lady who was shot and killed trying to climb through a window at the Capitol on January 6th?
Ashley Babbitt. Ashley
Babbitt is her name. And the Trump DOJ has just made a settlement with her family. They are to receive $5 million. They had wanted $30 million. So this lady that was trespassing and climbing through and breaking the law, and then was subsequently shot and killed because of it, is going to get a payout from the U.S. government. It's a part of a wrongful death lawsuit first brought in January of 2024. And her husband sued the federal government with the help of Judicial Watch. That's this far-right legal network that has been allied with President Trump. And they said she was just trying to exercise what she believed were her God-given American liberties and freedoms, Michael. And now her family gets $5 million.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, I get why she sued. I get why Judicial Watch, which is a right-wing group, sponsored her lawsuit. I understand that. She was killed. Her family says she was wrongfully killed. She was killed by an agent of the federal government on federal government property that she accessed unlawfully, but she felt she had a right to be there. I'm not surprised that there was a settlement, and I'm not surprised that this administration and its Justice Department settled the way they did. But I'm surprised in a sense, since the Babbitt family was asking for $30 million, that it came in at 1/6 of what they were asking, considering the parties involved. So, you know, and Judicial Watch does these sort of things. And I don't know. I don't think that Ashley Babbitt was supposed to be in the Congress that day. And I think that they were threatening and trying to tear down the doors. If it were my daughter who was there, and she was killed by a Secret Service agent, no matter what, I would probably listen to a lawyer who said we should sue the government. So I think that, you know, I get it, but I don't think that I'm not comfortable with $5 million to the family of a woman who broke the law to be where she was. But I also understand wanting to sue the government.
Yeah. I had on my newscast the president of CBS stepping down, and now we have this story that Trump has been threatening the ABC network again now over their coverage of the big jet that's supposed to be a gift from Qatar. President says that he wants Chairman Bob Iger to do something about ABC's fake news. He again, on Truth Social, went a little crazy, and he said, now I see they're at it again, and I give these sleazebags fair warning. The wonderful country of Qatar, after agreeing to invest more than $1.4 trillion in the United States of America, deserves much better than misleading fake news. Everyone, including their lawyers, has been told ABC must not say that Qatar is giving me, as to Trump, a free Boeing 747 airplane, because they are not. What he wrote.
Right. The president, whenever anything is written that he finds to be libelous, that he wants to go after the person who's saying it because he disagrees with it, or that it's merely being reported. As I've said many times before, the whole notion of fake news is something that will be the legacy of Donald Trump more so than any of the legislation he puts in, because so much of that can be undone. That he has sown doubt in the media and the press in the way that he has, and he has gotten people to look elsewhere for what he says is true, is going to be his lasting legacy. And so by going after these legacy news networks like ABC, whenever they say something he disagrees with, and then getting settlements from them, which is why Wendy McMahon dropped out of CBS, he's had success with it. So why not continue doing what has worked for you in the past, both with your people and with settling with the Trump family? And again, I look at that plane, and I think it's outrageous that a U.S. president is accepting it as a gift, even if it's a gift to his to the government. He can't accept it; it's too much of a gift. And even if it's a gift to his museum, it's a gift that his library and museum, I should point out. There are limits to that as well. So I don't see how this can be considered anything other than something that the president should return and not accept. But
Treasury Department Secretary Scott Bessent disagrees with you, Michael.
He
says, listen, this jet, $400 million luxury jet, and that would be the low end of the price tag on that, is, comparable to France giving us the Statue of Liberty in 1886. So if we can accept the Statue of Liberty, then surely we can accept this jet.
Yeah, I think it's the worst. I mean, it's only outdone by Trump himself, who compared it to Sam Snead, picking up a golf ball or making you not putt or whatever he said. He said you take it when someone gives. You don't break the rule just because someone says you can. And if Bessent wants to say that it is just like the Statue of Liberty, that was a totally different circumstance when the Statue of Liberty was given to the United States, and there's absolutely zero comparison that can be made with that, because it was a gift. It had been talked about, it had been curated almost, and it was accepted as a gesture between two countries. And it's very different than all of a sudden a country that we're actually dealing with and having business dealings with coming in with a jet airplane. It's a real false equivalency, a false comparison. So, but I understand why someone in the administration would be defending it, because the president's defending it, as is his right. But their comparisons have both been terrible when talking about it. You with me, Kim?
Oh, I popped out because I know you have a guest that has arrived.
We do have a guest, but I didn't know. I thought I was speaking into the wind there.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought I had to remove myself because we have a superstar in our midst.
We have a France segue here, right? They're giving us this. They give us the Statue of Liberty in 1886, and in 2025, we are sending Patrick McEnroe to the French Open to cover Roland Garros. We welcome to the Mark Thompson Show, and with the sufficient applause, Patrick McEnroe.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you.
I like that. I feel like I feel like I'm in the stadium at Court Philippe Chatrier.
Wow! Somebody's been studying, haven't they?
Which is the main center court at Stade Roland Garros. I like the accent, Michael. By the way, very good. Very impressed by you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. I want to ask you one thing. Just clear: is it still the French Open, or is it now just called Roland Garros?
Well, they prefer that it's called Roland Garros because we call it the French Open because that's what we do. We're Americans, so we just do whatever we want. It's in addition to accepting $400 million planes, we obviously do that too.
Right.
So, but yes, the French. Anywhere you go around Paris, around Europe, it's Roland Garros. So there's no such thing. There's the sign right there. Roland Garros.
I see. Okay.
And they're famous for making these beautiful artists' renderings, drawings of the tournament each year. So I'm excited to see what that looks like, because I haven't seen it yet this year. But it's Roland Garros, who, by the way, do you know who Roland Garros was, Michael?
I do. If he never served in Congress, I have no idea.
He didn't serve in Congress, nor did he ever serve.
Really, he was not a tennis guy.
He served in the Air Force of France.
Wow.
In World War I. He was a pilot. He was a fighter pilot. And there you go. Look at this. You guys are on top of this. You got some major production value going right here.
We do. I mean, the Mark Thompson show cuts no corners.
So what happened was there was the four horsemen. There were the famous French players that dominated. I think it was in the 10s or the 20s. Barotra, Rene Lacoste. There's four total of them. And they were so popular, they won the Davis Cup, beating the United States in the U.S. one year. And then the following year, they had to play in France, in Paris, to try to defend the title. There they are right there. This is unbelievable. I need this on my show. This is amazing. People actually listening to me. So they needed to build a stadium that was big enough, because they were so popular. They were unbelievably popular in France for obvious reasons, and they had beaten the U.S. in Davis Cup, and they needed to build a stadium that was big enough to host this, to put it on. And that's when they built the stadium. And they said it was like I think it was a club, or I remember who was sort of commissioned the stadium, and they said, okay, you need to name it after one of our people. And we want to name it after Roland Garros, because he had, I think, perished in the war as a fighter pilot. And so that was what they wanted to do to remember him, remember the club. And it's continued for, and they've redone the stadium. They've got a retractable roof on it now. So it's pretty cool. Great. So I'm excited to head over there on Wednesday with the new network covering. Of course, I've worked for ESPN for 28 years. And now Turner, TNT, is going to be hosting for the first time ever the coverage back in the U.S. So I'm excited about joining their team. And will
Charles Barkley be going with you for this one?
There's a rumor that he might show up. There's a rumor that Sir Charles will show up. So we're hoping that will happen. My brother will be over there with me, and Jim Courier is going to be on the team, and Lindsay Davenport and Andre Agassi. So it's going to be a host of big name tennis players.
That's exciting.
And then me too.
You're number one is in my book always. Patrick, tell me what, this is the kind of thing that people don't know, right? I mean, we turn on the TV, you're there with in your broadcast booth with a couple of partners. What do you like? What are these days like? What is your day like in terms of preparing for each match? We know what the players do. We know what the coaches do. And the fans don't get to look a lot at what your day is like on the day of a big match.
I'm glad you asked that, because this year, actually, I'm going to have a somewhat of a different role, which I'm really excited about, because it's going to be on TNT, and they're kind of doing it a little bit like the NCAA tournament. They bounce around. So I'm going to be hosting a show on True TV throughout most of the first week of the tournament. And what we're going to do is we're going to be like the red zone of tennis. So I'm going to have a little studio set up. I'm going to have different people joining me throughout the day, like my brother, like Jim Courier, like Lindsay Davenport, like Chris Evert. And we're going to just bounce around to all the hot matches. When I was a kid growing up in New York, this very well. Yeah. And I used to go out to the U.S. Open as a teenager. And the first thing I always did, Michael, when I got on site, this was obviously before the internet, we had everything on our phones. I would go and where they would sell the programs. The program was too expensive. But within the program, you could buy a little 2-page sheet. And that sheet had every court, every match on every court. And I would literally take the sheet, I'd study it, and I'd say, okay, I got to see this match. I got to go out to this match. When this one gets to the first set, end of the first set, I'm running out over there. And I would sort of plan out my day. We're going to try to do that on True TV this year. And we've got a lot of firepower production-wise. I've been speaking to some of the producers in the last week. I'm super excited, because it's going to be like, you can finally be at home with your clicker, and we're going to take you, hey, how come I want to see that set point on court 7. Let's go over there. Hey, what about court 12? It's, 5-all in the first set. So we're going to attempt to do that, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to it because it's sort of something new for me.
That's fantastic, actually, because sometimes you are watching a match and you know another match is going on, and you can't get to it and see it, which is really, really fun. As an announcer, you have to not really show preference to who. I mean, I'm sure there are players that you want to win when you're doing matches. How do you separate being a fan from doing the job of being an announcer who's got to be pretty much impartial? I guess sometimes you can favor an American player a little more overtly. But is that ever tough for you?
You know, it's all of us in this business of announcing, you know, there's people from all over the world, right? When I go to all these tournaments. So we always, the Italians want to see the Italians do well. The French want to see the French. So of course we're going to root for the Americans because it's fun for us. It brings more buzz to the tournament, brings more energy, brings more eyeballs. You know, it's good for business. So we all do that to a certain extent. But what to me is the best about tennis is the individual matchups. You know, it's the rivalries. It's the seeing the different personalities. That's why my brother and Borg was such a great rivalry. That's why Chrissy and Martina, two different styles. And then obviously in the modern era, Federer, Nadal, two totally different players, you know, different look.
You and Edberg.
Me and Edberg, you know, I choked against him in the juniors in the finals of the U.S. Open and Wimbledon juniors. But I was lucky enough to play with some of those guys, Becker, Edberg, my brother, Agassi, Sampras. It's another great rivalry.
Yeah.
So I think more than rooting for the particular players, Michael, it's like rooting for those great matchups, you know.
And that makes all the sense in the world.
And like Arthur Feast, for example, he's the highest ranked French player right now. Young guy, 20 years old, a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism, and a lot of moxie. He's got a lot of attitude. Yeah. So I'm going into this tournament and saying, man, I'd love to see him make a run because, you know, it'll be great for the tournament, great for the crowd.
Right. Yeah,
that always brings a lot of extra buzz to the event.
No question. Let's talk about a couple of the players that first of all, we showed Jannik Sinner earlier. He lost to Alcaraz in Rome yesterday, and you know we don't talk about sports a ton on this program, but we do once in a while. But I think that tennis being so international, and being that Mark Thompson and I are both big tennis fans, but you know the Sinner Alcaraz, is that a rivalry that stands up to the ones you were mentioning earlier?
Well, that's going to have to stand up to some serious names there and longevity, right? You can see Djokovic is still out there playing, you know, the rivalries that he had with Nadal and with Federer. I mean, they played each other, you know, 60 to 80 times. It's crazy. So, the early answer to that question is yes. It appears that that's going to be the rivalry we're all going to be paying attention to for the next decade. I think there'll be some other guys potentially crashing the party, like Jacob Mensik from the Czech Republic, who won the big tournament in Miami, João Fonseca, who's only 18 from Brazil, who's bringing a lot to the table. But certainly right now, Michael, Sinner and Alcaraz have distanced themselves. They've far overtaken the players that have been in the mix the last 10 years. You know, Medvedev, Rublev, Tsitsipas. They've blown past those guys. Zverev, who's number 2 now, back to number 3 in the world. And the only one that's won a major of those guys is Medvedev. And those players were thinking that once Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic retired, it was going to be their time. Well, guess what? Sinner and Alcaraz have sort of, you know, quickly reclaimed, like, we're here and we're going to win all the majors. We're going to win all the big tournaments. And I'm not sure who else is going to be able to compete with them at that level. Right now, I mentioned a couple of those young names. Those guys are knocking on the door. They're not there yet. You've got Americans like Tommy Paul, you know, Taylor Fritz, who made the U.S. Open final last year, losing to Sinner. All really good players. But are they the type of level of these two guys? The answer is no. And just like the answer was no over the course of the last 20 years, a lot of really, really good players, a lot of guys that maybe would have won more majors, but they couldn't get over the hump of the big three. And then you added Andy Murray, Stan Wawrinka in there over the course of their careers. So it looks like we may be headed in that direction. But let's remember, these guys are both young, early 20s. And then you've got some guys even younger than them, Jack Draper, into the top 5 as an Englishman. and he's the guy that could do some serious damage at Wimbledon, especially with his firepower on the serve and on the forehand.
At the U.S. Open too.
U.S. Open too. He had a good run last year. Made the semifinals.
Yeah. An Englishman in New York.
There you go.
If we before we let you go, I want to talk. There's a huge new tennis fan, or he's not a new tennis fan, but he's hugely new, and that's Pope Leo. He met with Sinner the other day. They had rackets out and balls that they were hitting inside the Vatican, and it was a pretty thrilling thing, I'm sure, for Sinner. That he asked the Sinner, said, "Do you want to play here?" And the Pope said, "We can't play right here." But there's a court at the Vatican, is there not? There it is. Yeah, look at that.
And it's a nice red clay court, and that's good. The red for the Pope, and
right,
and the white lines. And here's the thing, Michael. I can tell by how someone's handling a racket. If they know what they're doing. And I could tell, I get my racket here, like the way he was holding the racket.
He's got a racket.
I can tell that he knows what he's doing.
That's amazing.
See the way he's holding it?
I do.
He's holding it like he knows exactly what he's doing.
Right.
Give me the shot here. There you go. See? I'm like,
that's right.
He's the real deal. I mean, the guy's the real deal. So
no papal bull.
I'm only upset that I didn't get a chance to get him in my second edition. Tennis for Dummies just came out, my book.
All right. Well, I was going to talk about that. I was going to talk about the radio show. And we had somebody write in here who is a listener and lover of your podcast, but it's too high up in the comments for me to find her right now. But tell me about the book. Tell me about the radio show.
Well, the book, I did the first one, I think it was 98. Okay. So it needed to get updated because obviously I talk about, technique and how to learn the game, scoring, just the basic stuff. So that hasn't really changed much. But what has changed is a lot of the technology, the rackets, the strings, and of course the great players, because I list the top 10 players of the Open Era, top 10 great matches. So all that's updated. And it's a fun book. It's really fun. And if anybody's just mildly interested in tennis, you pick it up and you can it's like something to just keep around. Oh, let me check out about this. Well, how should I hit my volley, my forehand volley? It's all in there. As far as the radio show, I stopped doing the podcast because I actually got a job and actually getting paid to do a radio show on Sirius XM. So, I mean, miracles do happen, Michael. Listen, we talked about the Pope. So I'm doing my radio show every Saturday morning, bright and early. So tennis fans got to get up early, but they wanted to let me do a show that was, about other sports, but specifically about tennis. And
that's great. And that's on Mad Dog Radio, right?
It's on Mad Dog Sports Radio, 7 to 8 a.m. So I got to get up early, but there's my little holding court. And
by the way, you're holding your racket, I can tell you know what you're doing.
There you go. It's just the way I hold the microphone. Can you know? Do I know what I'm doing? So
right.
That's different. I've learned how to do that too over the years.
And quickly before you go, yes, indeed you have. Very, very well, by the way. I always say to people that that you are the number one tennis announcer, and by the way, you also have a brother who announces, which is my favorite turnaround.
He's pretty good too. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's getting there. He's learning. Yeah. If I may just quickly, Novak Djokovic, can he win another major? Do you think the $6 million man can be put back together and win another major?
I don't think he will. Obviously, he can. I mean, he's the greatest player I've ever seen. When you look at the breadth of his work and the titles, the head-to-head against Roger and Rafa, I call it the spread, Michael, of all the tournaments he's won on all the different surfaces, is by far the best spread. He's won 3 French Opens. That's supposed to be his worst surface, okay?
Right, it's amazing.
Federer, on the other hand, was also a great clay court player, but only won 1 French Open. He's up against Nadal in most of the years of his prime, but so is Novak. So Novak, to me, is the greatest ever. That being said, I don't think he's going to win another major. I actually said this at the beginning of last year. 2024. Okay. People thought I was crazy because he'd won 3 majors the year before.
Right.
And at some point, the injuries start to creep in, best of 5. And what really it didn't creep in. What exploded onto the scene was Sinner and Alcaraz. Okay. And I just don't think that in best of 5 right now, if he plays one of those guys and they're playing their normal level, that he can hang with them. Now, I think Wimbledon is still his best chance. That's where he's been. I mean, obviously he's been great in Australia too. He's won that 10 times. But because of the grass courts, there are very few players that really know how to play on grass.
Right.
Okay. There's a lot of players that know how to play well on clay. There's a lot of players that know how to play well on hard courts. So I think there's more guys that can pick him off on those surfaces. But on grass, if he can get, I don't expect him to be in the final four of the French Open. Okay. Right. But if he can get some matches in, play into the second week, get some confidence going. And number one, he's got to be healthy. But, he had the knee injury last year. He's had, the hip injury earlier this year. So it happens. The guy's he's going to be 38.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And it's amazing that he's done what he's done for this long. But I think Wimbledon still would be his best chance because he could kind of probably not face someone that could beat him until the second week. Whereas on the other surfaces, he could face someone in the first, second round that could beat him. And there's not that many guys that are that comfortable on grass. Medvedev's not that great on grass. Zverev, not great on grass. Those are great hardcourt players. Casper Ruud, great on clay. The only guy is he's not the only guy. The guy, Mr. Alcaraz, is amazing on grass. So if he's at his best, he's going to beat Djokovic on grass, just like he destroyed him last year. But Novak won. He did win a big one last year. He won the Olympics, which was on clay, and it was 2 out of 3. And that helped him, I think, a little bit. So I will never say never with Novak because he's the man. But I don't think he's going to win another major. And I think if he doesn't this year or he doesn't get close to winning one, I think this will be his final year.
Amazing stuff. Patrick McEnroe, the book is Tennis for Dummies, the new edition written by Patrick. Look for it. Go to that Mad Dog Radio, to the Sirius Mad Dog Radio, and listen to Patrick's show, Holding Court. Great name for a tennis show. And TNT, you're all going to be watching Roland Garros. I mean, I've just from the comments here that so many people who are listening to the show are tennis fans, which is great. I thought this would be out of the blue here. One of them even mentioning Melissa Errico, your wife, as a big Broadway star. So
there you go.
Nice. There you go. We'll look for you on TNT.
Let me give her a quick pop because you would love the show she did just over a week ago just outside DC. It was all about World War I. And she took all the songs of that era and she weaved them into like her own personal story of her family of immigrants coming from Italy and sort of the great songs of the vaudeville era that were happening in the 10s and the 20s. And it was a phenomenal show. And I think it's going to come to New York later this year, early next year. So that's exciting.
That is great to know. You worked World War I in with Melissa. You worked World War II in with Roland Garros. We're covering it all here. Patrick, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the Mark Thompson Show. Good luck in France. We'll be watching.
I appreciate you having me on, Michael. All the best. And the last thing I'll say is low.
That's Patrick McEnroe. I think somebody writing in here talking about another sport. I think I've pulled all my sports ticks out already. There's a lot of hockey ahead. Dallas is dangerous, but we might be looking at the Oilers Panthers. That's exactly right. Patrick, thanks. Still on, but we got that a little bit more sports. Folks, that was fun. I thought. I hope you enjoyed it. We didn't just do sports here on the Mark Thompson Show. We took it a little farther with Patrick. Some interesting insights, interesting about Djokovic, also what his life is like, what Patrick's life is like when he does a tournament. And it's a little break from talking about Mike Pence and Qataris and Mexican ships hitting bridges and things like that. We all sports. One thing about sports is it does take us away a lot. Canadian to $20 Canadian from depressed Canadian. I want the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup, depressed Canadian. I hope that happens.
Yeah, I think you should do a little sportsy, a little. I know we did tennis, but I think you need to really round up that hockey.
Well, we can bring a hockey player in at some point. I can definitely I can tap into the hockey. I don't know if we'll do it later in the week. Yeah, maybe we can get somebody on. I just don't think that hockey has the same reach with this audience as tennis does, because tennis is all over the world and all over the map. Hockey is just on my television. But Kim, thanks. Before we, I'm glad. Thank you, people saying it was a good interview. I hope you enjoyed it. A little departure from what we normally talk about. Before we head out, Kim, there was one. Didn't we have one story that we thought was a fun story to talk about before we headed out, or are we just going to go right back to the news?
I don't know what the fun story was, but I can tell you that I was just looking at some stories, including one of them, Vance, JD Vance, who we talked earlier about Vance and the Pope. And now there's a story about Vance asking whether Biden was capable of doing the job, talking about his cancer diagnosis. He's not got some very positive things to say about the former president. And it seems to me so silly because he's not the president anymore, Biden. So why would you come out swinging against a guy who has a metastatic cancer diagnosis? Why can't you just say, I'm sorry this happened to him, the end? Why do you have to use it as an excuse to roll back time and beat up the former president one more time?
Well, it's also about poking the bear, right? And they know if they get Vance saying something, then it's something that can be gold, and they ask the question and it goes viral. It's a different environment now. So when you're asking questions, you want to ask provocative questions always, but when you're asking questions like that, you're doing it. It's almost nefarious, but you're doing it in a way that that you're trying to elicit a response about something that could be controversial or could cause some kind of combat. And so it's upsetting to people, obviously, when we hear that stuff, but it's also the coin of the realm in certain circles, and that's a problem.
I'll also tell you that I saw this story pop up, and now we have the United States, we collectively, we have a major new defense partnership with the United Arab Emirates. Our allies are shifting. And I don't know if it makes you concerned, but it makes me concerned. The Trump administration plans to establish a major defense partnership with the United Arab Emirates, bilateral cooperation that could mean joint weapons development, closer military collaboration between the U.S. and the UAE. This is a letter of intent that has been signed by Pete Hegseth and the UAE Defense Minister, and it's a roadmap that will guide enhanced military-to-military cooperation, joint capability development, long-term defense alignment between our two countries. It's significant because the United States has only ever signed a similar pact with India, which led to expanded military exercises and security agreements and privileges for India. And so here we are with the UAE. We're casting our lot with these folks.
Yeah, it's look, I don't know what the business side of it is, but it's certainly trying to be in competition with the Saudis. It's certainly trying to make a mark there and saying to the Europeans, we're post Europe, right? You're choosing when to be our allies and on things, and especially after he's been punitive with them with the tariffs. I think that's obviously the kind of move that he would make in terms of the strategy of it, in terms of the what it means in a geopolitical way. I don't know. They don't seem to be like enemies. They seem that you're doing business with allies at this stage, and I can't understand in any way how people are alarmed initially by the Saudis and not alarmed by what's happening, with UAE and Qatar and getting close to these Emirates, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what will happen with that, but I think it's a sign of the times for sure.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah.
So we are now at the 1 o'clock hour, and I think we've had a good show. I'm going to be back in Mark's seat on Thursday anyway, and maybe previous to that. But Kim, you're steering the ship tomorrow, from what I understand.
How am I going to do it without you, Michael Shure?
Oh, you're going to get through it beautifully, as you always do. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you to Tony for impressing our guests with the quick images you're putting up there, and for finding lots of Pope shirts for us today, which is great. Mark will be back here, I believe, on Monday.
Yes, he will.
But we're going to be holding court, as Patrick would say, for the rest of the week. Thank you to Gary Dietrich. Thank you to Patrick McEnroe, and we will see you. I will see you on Thursday Everyone else, will see you all tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
David K. Johnston tomorrow as well.